Hey, JD here. Welcome to the Mead House. You know, over the past several years, we've brought you over 150 episodes of mead making education, information, and entertainment. More than 100 guests have stopped by the Mead House, professional mead makers, medal-winning home mead makers, competition organizers, experts on yeast and honey, and brewers just like you and me have all visited to share their knowledge. Hey, the Mead House is produced for home mead makers and brewers looking for a bit of inspiration and information from the many guests and discussions we have here at the house. You can help support the Mead House by joining the Mead House Keyholder Club on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com and search for the Mead House. There's also a link in the show notes. For as little as $2 a month, you can become a keyholder. We've teamed up with some great companies to provide thank you gifts for your support. So get on over to Patreon, join the Mead House Keyholder Club, and get your own set of keys to the Mead House. You can listen to the Mead House podcast with your favorite player, and be sure to rate us 5 stars on iTunes or your favorite listening venue. The Mead House, mead making entertainment you just don't want to miss. Hey, welcome to the Mead House, and thanks for listening to episode number 192. Just 8 more to go, boys, and we got to come up with something special. I guess this is going to happen after we come back from our hiatus. We'll get into that a little bit later on, but hey, I was just trimming the hooves and shoeing some horses out back when Jeff and Ryan wandered in. I'll probably have to mop the kitchen floor after they leave, but hey, my name is JD Webb, and you're at the Mead House. Hey, we're all over the place. Again, I'm not going to run through the whole list that goes on and on and on. Check the front page of the website, themeadhouse.com. We're just listed everywhere, and hey, if you subscribe, make sure you rate us 5 stars. You can subscribe to any number of the locations that we put out our podcast at. Again, check them on the front page of the website. Now, if you're listening via the website, you see the little subscribe bar under there. You can subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, Amazon, whatever you want. And then you'll get the episode as soon as they hit. But hey, in segment 1, we're wrapping up this 6-week series about honeybeer and how brewers have been incorporating honey either by adding it to the boil, adding it to the whirlpool, or by high crowding fermentation. And we've discovered that honey has been used to both enhance flavors and raise the ABV and add character. So in this episode, we talked to our last brewer. He's no stranger around here at the house. In fact, I think we named a barn stall after him, or was that the Fishbein bedroom out back? I don't remember. I forgot, but hey, Ash Fishbein joins us here in a little bit to talk about Wannabee, a honey beer from Hobb's Brewing, and we'll also get the scoop on what's new at Sap House Meadery as well. Hey, in segment 2, step feeding, approaches to step feeding. You know, this is another subject, Jeff, that we haven't spent a whole lot of time on. We've had questions, I think, in the social media, right?
Times, yeah.
And you know, we've never given it any discussion. So it's worth talking about here tonight. So that's up on segment 2, and then of course in segment 3, that's the social club. Hey, this is where we try to answer questions from mead makers with no formal expertise, other than what we've experienced in our own brew house, all that and more here at the Mead House. But first, hey, thanks to all the Mead House keyholders out there who help keep the Mead House podcast free. You too can become a Mead House keyholder and help support the show for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com, search for the Mead House, or just click on the show, the link in the show notes. We've got some great thank you gifts to send out to you, plus a listing of keyholder-only content like interviews from Ash Fishbein over at Patreon. So, again, search for the Mead House at Patreon or just click the link in the show notes. What are we drinking tonight? 2 fists in it here at the Mead House. And both of these happen to be from Sap House Meadery. I'll be darned. The first one, Jeff, I don't even know how the hell to pronounce this again. Ash talked to me about this too. Calendula? Sounds like something out of ancient Rome. Calendula mead. I don't even know what the hell that is. I think Ash said wasn't it a flower? In fact, Ash is hanging around with us here on the mic. I can just quickly ask him, Ash, is that a flower? Yes or no?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it's a flower. So this is a flower, calendula, very mild. Hmm. Very mild. A lot of floral. Hmm. It smells like a pretty flower. I'd put a bouquet of those on the table. Hmm. I'd get the. It's got what is that? Hmm. It's a mild mead. The little sweetness right up front on the tongue kind of settles in a little bit, and then I get all these little flowery bouquet type things dancing around a little bit. Um, Feel a little bit of heat on the back end. Goes down nice and easy. A little on the dry side on the finish. This is quite nice. It probably would be better chilled. I'm drinking it at room temperature. This is quite different than anything that I've had, I think, from Sap House. But I like it. It's good stuff. The other one, this is my all-time favorite. I bet Ash even knows what it is. This is called One of These Days. And this is a small batch mead that is very special to me. It's aged for 2 years in bourbon barrels, wildflower honey. And I'll tell you, I from one bottle to the next, and I've had several of these bottles, and they're all the same. I mean, one. I mean, they seem to get a little bit better. I know this is the newest one that I've gotten. Certainly not from the first batch that they produced. But let me tell you something. If you're a bourbon drinker, if you're a serious bourbon drinker, you'll not waste any time picking up all the notes of bourbon out of this. Period. Right down to the barrel char. I mean, I get notes of caramels. I get notes of brown sugars. I get even the deeper notes of the orange. Sometimes the orange, like a dried orange or a candied orange backbone in there a little bit. Uh, mm, my word, my word. This is another one. Mm-mm-mm. This is time in a barrel right here. This is probably the single best mead that I've ever had out of Sap House Meadery. Again, it's called One of These Days. This is a bourbon barrel aged 2 years. Just the right amount because I'll tell you, it's perfection. It's just absolutely perfection in a bottle. And if you're a bourbon drinker, you're going to love this. Again, this is one that you want to sit and contemplate, drink it slowly. A little bit cooler than room temperature, maybe. Drop an ice cube in it, even if you want. It's good to go, even if you do that. But fantastic stuff, really good. Jeff, what did you put in your cup tonight, bud?
Well, I mean, surprise, surprise, I've got something from Sap House in one of my cups, and in the other of my cups, I've got something I made. So I've got a barrel-aged Sap House as well. I'm drinking the Split Open and Melt. That's the meadow foam traditional that's been aged in rum barrels. And, you know, I've tasted a lot of a lot of meads that incorporated the meadow foam honey, and it's very sweet, like almost cloying. I can only drink so much of it, and it did, yeah. Somehow the rum barrel has just kind of toned that down to a really mellow character that I get the rummy notes, and it really smooths it out. This is, yeah, everything that comes out of the barrel program is awesome. I mean, but yeah, this has been one of my favorites. Then in my other glass, I was cleaning out a closet for just getting ready to move here over the last weekend, and you guys will not believe what I found a bottle of.
What?
I found a bottle of the coffee mead.
No.
I collaborated with Eric on like episode 10, episode 15. This bottle is almost as old as the show.
Oh my Lord.
And it's kind of terrible. I remember being so much better. The coffee flavor is kind of there. It tastes more like a kind of a bitter dark chocolate than a coffee proper.
Okay. Oh my God.
Yeah, I get a little bit of the, we tried bochetting the honey to go with that, thinking that would be good. I'm getting some of the roasty notes from that, but man, there is just something on top of this that's kind of, it's not sour, it's not bitter, but it's not pleasant either. I'm having trouble putting my finger on it, but yeah,
Oh,
no,
Lord.
not going to miss this one.
My God, you know what, fans of the show, all our listeners, you really got to go back to almost the beginning. I don't know what episode we started this coffee thing on, but this has been a rolling joke now for how long? I mean, you know, how long have we been in business? 3-4 years now?
Yeah.
The coffee meet. And we have been. Go ahead.
I was going to say it's kind of fitting because I may have something to say about coffee mead when we come back from the break. Just a little teaser there. But it's great to have Ash on because he's the one that gave us that nugget about different grinds at different times.
There you go. Telling you, man. Oh my God, that was so fun. That coffee mead, it's gonna come back to haunt us, guys. I'm telling you.
Oh, yep.
Ryan, oh my God, please tell me you didn't find a bottle of coffee mead too at your place.
I actually did. I had one yesterday. I had one yesterday with my neighbor, and he was drinking it, and he said, "Is there hot sauce in this?" I don't.
Somebody drop a chili pepper in it. Yeah, right.
I don't know where he got that. I mean, it wasn't next to a bottle of Crybaby Craig's or anything like that. So we'll see.
Oh Lord.
You know, I'll start out by telling you what I'm not drinking tonight. I am not drinking one of my Infinity Sangria meads. I've taken a break on those.
Yeah.
And actually don't even have the Infinity bottle is cleaned out. It emptied out. It's cleaned out. Next time I do that, I'll have to start a new Infinity. What I am drinking tonight is one of my dark braggot. So this is a braggot with a probably a Pilsen malt backbone, and then I like to add because again I like a clean slate, and then I start building on it. The chocolate malt, the roasted malt, the dark malt. It's black it's black and as motor oil, and it's got a really tan head. And then I think I used mesquite honey in this, so the mesquite honey is there, and it's good. It's really well balanced. I'm going to use that word balance. It's really nicely balanced. I'll tell you, it also not not a surprise to anyone who drinks my stuff, but it's also more carbonated than you might typically see from this style. Again, if we're saying that it's based off of a stout, the beer stout, it's a little higher carbonated than most stouts would be, which is really nice. I think it actually goes really well with this. I think with a little less carbonation, it might be a little heavy. I think the bubbles kind of help lighten it up a little bit. So very, very tasty, very nice, and it kind of feeds in well with what our topic of the evening, at least our first topic of the evening.
All right. Good stuff. I tell you, joining us tonight, he really doesn't need any introduction. I mean, he's got a regular chair around the table here anyway. Ash Fishbein in the house here at Mead House. Thanks for joining us tonight, Ash.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for having me back again. It's been a while. A lot has gone on since I've sat at the table here. Hang on one second.
Yep.
I just had to crack that open.
Oh, okay. That sounds good.
I'm enjoying a Hobbs Brewing Company beer called Backroad Brown, and it's a robust and malt forward brown ale with awesome caramel and coffee notes. And we do a late edition cascade hopping, and really brightens it up. And it's become a real fan favorite for us over at the brewery. So I'm enjoying this evening.
Yeah, that sounds
Cheers,
good.
everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Ash, we've been talking this last 6 weeks set, today's the last show, about honey beer. And we've talked to various brewers from just all over the place. And I think we're putting together a pretty good foray of how brewers are using honey in their beers. Of course, this kind of ties in a little bit with our braggot making. That's probably one of the favorite styles of mead that the mead house likes to play with for the most part here. And again, the reason why for our listeners out there is because braggots are probably one of the most, lesser known categories or styles. You don't see a lot of braggot categories although you're starting to see them come around now, I think, more and more. I'd like to think we've had something to do with that, maybe not, but competitions used to be, they would group, some oddball stuff in with braggots, or group braggots in with some oddball stuff, and you really never had a chance for your own braggot to stand on its own against another braggot. So, but I think we kind of pushed past that. Jeff, am I on the right track here?
Well, I don't judge that many. There haven't been that many to judge in the last year, to be frank. But yeah, I'd like to think we're putting it a little bit more on the map. We're getting some traction out there. So
yeah. So braggots, that's the harmonious blend, beer and mead, and you can accomplish that in many different ways. Ash, as you well know, mix mead and beer together, or start from scratch and stew your own grains, and add the honey and whatnot, and of course that comes in various ways and means and methods as well. So, but one of the things that we have been talking about, like I said, this 6-week stint, was honey beers and how brewers are incorporating honey into their beer. All different kind of ways we're discovering. So one of the beers that you sent me, am I allowed to even say that? I'm not breaking any federal laws or anything, am I?
Yeah.
Okay, I had a beer from Hobb, so I won't tell you how I got it, but it was called Wannabee. I've had it several times. I've been fortunate enough to have a very good friend out in New Hampshire who has sent it to me not once, but twice. And that's usually the first one out of the refrigerator and the last one to be drank. Because I just, I only get a couple of cans of it and I got to save it. I was going to try to save one, Ash, for tonight, but dude, that shit's so good I had to drink it. So,
well, and I have to interject because, Jeff, Ryan, resend me your addresses. Because it's only fair that everybody get some beers.
Yeah.
But resend me your addresses, and I'd be more than happy to send some stuff out to you guys as well.
Ash, I might do a two-way there. I might, yes, I'll send you my address, but if I can, I might send you a couple of mine just to let you tell me what you get out of them. And
sure,
I've had some unique feedback lately, but I think it's the source.
There you go.
User error.
User error. Anyway, Wannabee. Yeah, it's a honey beer that Hobb Brewery puts out, and it's good stuff. Now, here's what I remember from it. It's light. It's very refreshing. It's got the honey character hits me in the face usually when I open the can. I mean, when I pour it in a glass, I get like honey character like right on the nose. It's not. I mean, people get confused when they see honey anywhere on the label of anything. They instantly think it's going to be this sweet concoction of, I mean, who ever heard of putting honey in beer? You know what I mean? But it's not that at all. Okay, it doesn't taste like honey, but the character that gives it, the aromas that come out of it, I like to think that it does add something. Ash, so tell us about the Wannabee. How was that conceived? How you incorporated the honey into it? What and why you didn't choose one method over another? Whether you added it a high krausen, added it to the boil, whatnot. If you can give us some information on that, without of course releasing any corporate secrets.
They'd have my head if I did that.
I know the owner. Don't worry.
As some of your listeners may or may not know, I own Sap House Meadery, but I also own a brewery and brew pub in two separate locations, or three separate locations. And we just finished building our new production brewery, so we've been able to play around and really tweak some recipes. And the first batch of Wannabee I sent you is actually brewed at the Tavern, which is about 11 miles north of our new brewery. And that was one of the last cans we actually produced before packing up the canning line and moving it to our new location, where we brewed it again, making some tweaks. Of course, we have new equipment down there and a few different tools that we didn't have at the Tavern. And that was one of the first beers. This beer became a fan favorite. And out of the various honey beers we've produced there, this one keeps getting a call back. And, over the years, I get questioned all the time by the people that really know me, why Sap House and Hobbs have not done a formal collaboration. Mm-hmm. And it's such a valid question. It's such a great question. And there's reason for that. And the reason is we haven't found the right marriage yet. And it doesn't have anything to do with one putting out a quality ingredient versus an inferior product, rather. It's really just finding that right thing that says, wow, that is a Sap House beer, a Sap House mead in a beer. And that's really what we're waiting for. And we've produced a lot of honey beers. But this one here, I think we've made the right tweaks. And, in the past, everybody at the brewery has always wanted us to use only local wildflower honey for this. And of course, near and dear to my heart, I understand local honey, and I have a whole company that is surrounded by that premise. But with this can in particular, the most recent batch in particular, I actually didn't go local with it. And I did that intentionally. The other ones in the past were all New England wildflower honey. The very, very first one was New Hampshire wildflower honey. This one that we recently put out was clover. And I didn't want it to be wildflower and just be, kind of a generalized flavored honey. The clover that came out last year was the absolute best clover honey yield ever. I don't know if you guys have researched the clover honeys that were produced last year, but it was absolutely the best quality clover honey produced. So I wanted in on that. Now, when most people, like consumers, not brewers, not people that understand mead, if you can clear all that out of your head, most consumers, when they taste honey, know two flavors of honey, and that is orange blossom and clover, because those two are what you find in the stores in squeeze bottles, right?
Yep.
Right.
So when I heard clover honey was like at its peak last year, the best season for it, yada, yada, I grabbed hold of it. And I was like, I need to do that because everyone knows that clover flavor. And this is going to be more pronounced, that more cinnamon, savory spice forward out there, just right there for you to drink and enjoy. So that is why I chose that honey. And the way we brewed it.
Let me stop you there.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question
Sure.
there.
Of course, please stop me anytime I talk too much.
Your the honey. So we all know that varietals change. The flavor could change from year to year, just based on the weather, climate conditions, what have you. Perhaps the beekeeper moved his boxes to a different clover field or a different orange blossom grove or whatever. How do you maintain the recipe, the I guess the integrity of the recipe? Is that the right question? Based on seasonal changes with honey.
Well, you really can't.
Yeah.
And that's what makes, if we're going back to mead, that's what makes mead amazing. If we talk braggot, it also is what makes braggot amazing.
Sure.
Is that you become, you then start gaining vintage. And it's things that people clamor for in wine. People clamor for vintage in wine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things that easily gets overlooked that we have at our fingertips in honey beer and mead, because you could quickly create vintage. And that's one of the best parts of our barrel program.
Oh, yeah.
Which I have a lot to talk about on that if we ever have the time tonight.
Oh,
but
we will. We will.
That's what makes that so great, is that when I pick those honeys, I'm not just going, oh, I picked XY honey because it sounded cool. When I talk to the people I buy it from, I ask them, how was the season? Is this the best time to buy that? Or is this a watered down kind of diluted flavor in comparison? And I always just kind of keep digging deeper. And the people I do business with are very, very open and very knowledgeable to do that. But you can't control that. You can get close. I mean, there are some underlying key markers in particular varietals that will always be prominent. Clover honey will always have a cinnamon-like structure or character to it, or a nuance that you can get. Some years it's better than others.
Yeah.
California orange blossom will always have predominant jasmine flower flavor, whereas Florida will not.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big difference between those two honeys. So having a little bit of knowledge in that's really what it is, just tasting a lot of honey. To protect the flavor in this batch, one thing that we did is we didn't boil it. Not that can destroy any honey, but you do break off a lot of volatiles. A lot of stuff can break out. I couldn't tell you what those are. I don't, have a mass spec or any way of determining what those are, but I know that heat can create some volatility, and you might lose some important markers that you want to keep. So we actually blended our honey at knockout to protect that. We knocked out a little bit warmer. We pretty much threw some in the whirlpool and then some in the fermenter. We pushed it in at knockout at about 75 degrees. We quickly lowered the temperature by glycol, by jacketed tanks down to about 68, prepped it for pitch. About 10 parts per million of oxygen. And, we pretty much tried to protect the honey as best we could. We didn't want to boil it.
What's the addition of the honey ash? How did you put the recipe together? What was the vision that you had as far as this honey beer?
So that's a great question. I mean, to me, this beer is a bit of low-hanging fruit. It's not overly complicated to come up with honey and lemons. Mm-hmm. Most people would say, "Oh, I'd have that if I were sick," or "It's a great medicine," and yada yada. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not a real brain buster here to put these flavors together. But what I wanted to do is be able to create a balance that wasn't overly hopped to give the acidity. I wanted to see lemon juice give the acidity versus like super brightness from the hops. So when you drink it, you do get some dryness from the hops. You get a little bit of alpha from the hops, but most of the acidity that comes from that is actually from that lemon juice which brightens it up.
Yeah.
And I think really puts that honey on a pedestal and says, there it is. I feel like it's kind of protected by that, figuratively speaking, of course.
Yeah, it does say honey lemon on the label. I remember, but mind you, you know, here again, I mean, put the word lemon on anything, instantly you're going to think, oh, this is going to be really tart. Lemon in your iced tea, on your fish, whatever, adds that tartness. But
Right.
it's not lemony flavored. Okay,
Right.
It does add that brightness. That's what makes it so refreshing. I mean, this is a beer you can drink any time of the year.
Well, and we brewed it again and released it. This is the funny thing. We released it in December again. And people were like, what? Everybody's releasing stouts. You guys are releasing a blonde? And we're like, yeah, everybody's zigging and we're zagging because we're different. And we want to try something different. And it went over. People were like, this is great. It's refreshing. It's light. It's not dark. It's not a stout. It's not heavy. It's not imperial. It's not an IPA. Thank God. People were actually pretty stoked that we zigged when others zagged. And, an interesting part of owning a brewery, I'm coming from the mead world. There's like a full circle here that's very strange. I started brewing beer first. I read Beowulf in 11th grade. I began making mead. I made beer and mead throughout for 10 years, but I started a meadery first.
Mm-hmm.
And that was that's been my life for 10, almost 11 years. 7 years ago, I started a brewery. Here we are, we're in full motion now. I'm now an international brand in Central America and New England. And I'm now coming at this brewing industry and this brewery from a winemaker or mead maker standpoint, which I feel like gives me a little bit of a leg up because I can understand balance a little bit more. I can understand some of these characteristics a little bit. And I wouldn't say more. I'd say differently, at least from a different perspective than being a home brewer, sticking with home brewing beer. I can actually come at it from a different angle and flank from the left instead of the right, which I feel like we're in our infancy right now with the knowledge that I'm about to really throw down on the brewery. There's a lot of things going on that are very different that we'll be working with very soon. And honey is going to be a big part of what we use.
This is, for all of our listeners out there, Ash Fishbein, he's no stranger to the Mead House. And when he's on the show, I usually tell our listeners, get out paper and pencil and start taking notes because this dude's going to be dropping nuggets all over the floor. Okay, and if you don't pick them up and put them down on paper, you'll be missing out. Re-listen to the show if you need to, but he's already put a list together. So, and I was actually asked the next question I was going to ask you. What influence did the Mead House or did the Sap House Meadery have on your development of beers, specifically, of course, the honey beer over at Hobbs? And you answered that brilliantly. I mean, I think that's the benefit of having brewed, maybe beer first or mead. Actually, it really doesn't make any difference. I think both offer its own, you can take your own influences from either, I guess, huh?
Absolutely. I think it's all tools in your tool belt. Whether you learn to use a hammer first or a drill, it doesn't matter. I think with the position that I've put myself in, both teams, Sap House and Hobbs, I think we're positioned this year. I think you're going to see some seriously amazing things coming out of both. We used the last 10 months at Sap House to better our infrastructure. We've got better equipment. We've got new chilling methods. We've got new tanks coming. We've got new labelers. We've got all this stuff that's happening. But then on top of it, we're sticking with our roots of, we just brought in, a whole bunch of brand new oak. We just brought in a whole bunch of brand new varietal honeys. And we're just like full bore right now. And I really feel like we're on the cusp of just busting wide open this year with innovation and new things coming our way. With the beer side, yeah.
Well, no, go ahead.
What's that? I was going to say, with the beer side, we have that same opportunity as well, because we've always been. I built Hobb's Tavern and Brewing Company as what I thought was a brewery with a restaurant attached, and boy, was I wrong. I mean, I was way wrong. JD, when you come, you'll see how wrong I was. It is a giant restaurant with this tiny brewery attached, and a lot of people didn't know we brewed beer.
Oh, really?
And we have a ton of fans that love our food and love our atmosphere and come in for the experience that are now going, holy crap, you guys have a 10,000 square foot brewery with all this going on, and we're doing all these crazy things down there. And like now it's like really starting to take shape. And next week we fire up our cool ship.
Oh, wow.
And we are like super pumped about that. So are you guys familiar with the cool ship?
Yeah. So what's going in it? What tell us about your plans for christening the cool ship?
Yeah, that's the key word right there, christening. So I love that you asked that question. I love that. So we have lined up a whole bunch of our favorite lambics and goose. And we're going to be cracking Cantillon, Allagash, Lindemans. We're going to be cracking open some Two Roads from Area 2. We've got all these wonderful lambics and inspirations for me, because I absolutely love sour beers. We're going to be cracking those open. We're all going to be enjoying those in our new cool ship room. And then the dregs of those bottles are going to be mixed with distilled water, inputted into spray bottles. And we've got these wonderful art pieces that are oak staves that come down on stainless steel, that kind of come down in like almost a bowl pattern, but they're wide, they kind of spread apart. And that's so when the steam comes up, the water and the condensation collects on those staves, and the beads of water roll back down, collecting the bacteria and inoculating the cool ship. I'll send you guys some pics.
Wow.
And so we're going to do that. We're going to actually spray the art pieces with all the dregs of these wonderful lambics and see what happens. They're all good mojo. So I think we're going to have a really, really fun time with that. And I don't know how many cool ships there are in the country. Someone told me there's less than 30, and we're proud to be amongst the few that are able to do this program. We've got 1,000 square foot barrel cellar that can hold a few hundred barrels, and we're pretty stoked about it. So a lot of great things going on. And I plan on using that cool ship with honey as well.
One last question before I kick it over to Ryan and Jeff, if they've got any more on the honey beer. Why did you choose knockout and not during ferment high krausen or any other method to add the honey? Why did you choose the knockout?
Sure. So I wasn't looking for high ABV. I was looking for a solid grain bill and a bit of honey to just kind of bump it up. That beer is, I'm forgetting off the top of my head the ABV of it, but it's not overly high. I think it's somewhere in the 6 range. And I wasn't looking to blast the gravity up any higher than it needed to. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want to put a super low Play-Doh or low gravity wort into the fermenter. So we added it at knockout as a kind of a different approach. I wanted to use the temperature of the wort to be able to also help mix it in a little bit better. Mm-hmm. It was just something that we thought we would try.
You're not alone.
I feel like we hit it.
Yeah, I mean, you're not alone because we've talked to brewers all during this 6-week stint, who have done it differently. Some at knockout, some during high crowds, and some even during a boil. So
Yep.
it runs the full gamut. So, so interesting how each one of you guys are doing it differently, yet producing a very high quality brew, very tasty and very enjoyable for sure. Let's move on to the, actually, Jeff and Ryan, you guys got any more Hobbs Brewing, the honey beer at all before we move into Sap House?
Yeah, I actually teased out that you were going to talk about barrels with Hobbs. So I don't want us to lose that idea here.
Yeah.
Well, before our time gets away.
Yeah.
The barrels with Hobbs or barrels with Sap House?
Yes.
I thought you said barrels with Hobbs, but barrels,
yes.
Period.
Well, we are doing barrels with both. We're doing barrels with Hobbs. We're doing March 20th. So we're going into maple weekend, maple season here right now. So all the trees are tapped. Everybody's making maple syrup here. And it culminates with a big event for most sugar shacks in the area. So we get inundated with a lot of tourists coming in and enjoying folks boiling that day. And we're doing a big event with food trucks and all sorts of cool stuff. And we're launching it at Hobbs. 2 beers that are called Sugar Moon. And one is a bourbon barrel aged and the other is a rum barrel aged maple wee heavy. And we use maple syrup, but we also use candy cap mushrooms. And I don't know if you're familiar with candy cap mushrooms, but they taste just like maple syrup.
Oh, my word.
You heard it here first, folks.
Now, is this going to be out there when I get there? You going to have it when I'm there, or is it too early?
I will. Oh no, it's being launched on March 20th. So I will save you some bottles.
Please. Please.
Yeah.
You know me and your barrel program.
Absolutely. And we already brewed for next year's. So we just brewed for next year's batches already. Those are going into our barrel cellar this early next week. I'm going to pick up oak for that.
So we had talked about, I think maybe in one of our private conversations, we had talked about a barrel room, temperature controlled and all that. Have you done anything with that? Something similar where you can control a temp like a rick house?
We are not controlling the temp in our cellar. Okay. I've kept temp down there, our thermometer down there to just monitor how low it goes. And February was extremely cold this year, and it really doesn't drop below 50. So I'm not going to even bother. Yeah. It's just not even worth it. I'm doing lambics.
It will vary, right? I mean, it'll go up and down. Is that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool,
oh, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, it won't get much hotter than 60. Yeah. Around here, cellars don't get much hotter than 60. But what's great is I can control humidity, which also plays a big part in oak aging.
Yep.
As far as the Sap House's barrel program is concerned, we just brought in a bunch of barrels from grape brandy, apple brandy. We brought in some bourbons. We brought in some mezcal.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. We brought in some mezcal. We thought we're going to name that barrel. That'll be JD's barrel.
JD's barrel.
And then we've got a bunch of others coming in as well. We're waiting for the broker to get us a few more. But we've got some really cool varietal honeys going right now. We've got Kaive. I don't know if you guys have ever used Kaive, but it's a Hawaiian honey. And have any of you used that?
No.
I have not, but I've seen a lot of the cool kids on social media lately talking about all their Hawaiian honeys.
Yeah, Hawaiian honeys are fun. I mean, we did the Lahua. This one is the Kaive. It's minty. Strangely, it's minty. It's got some cool tropical notes. It's very strange, but oddly enough, and I've got to talk to Amina at UC Davis about it, but all Hawaiian honeys so far have been almost seeded, meaning they all seem like they crystallize creamy. And I don't know if you guys have noticed that. And I don't know if it's got to do with like volcanoes or their flowers, but all of the Hawaii's honeys so far that I've used they crystallize differently than any of the other honeys. Have you all noticed that?
I've never had a Hawaiian honey.
Okay.
I'm actually staring at some crystallized Hawaiian honey, and I'm not seeing a big difference from what I usually see, but
okay.
I guess it is, when I push on it, a little softer than like a crystallized honey I'm used to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it has to do with water content.
Yeah. Interesting.
I don't know. Something I've noticed. But we're doing a kaive. We're doing a maple blossom, which is kind of buttery and it has a little nuttiness to it as well. We've got toyon. I don't know if you've used toyon honey.
No.
But that is like hazelnuts.
Oh, that would be
good. It's got a really strong nuttiness, and hazelnuts are kind of what comes forward with that. That's called toyon. We've got an avocado blossom, which I'm sure everybody has used.
Yeah.
That's just a great honey. You'll see avocado blossom being used at Hobb's in projects coming up. We are going to be working on.
That's a nice, dark, rich, deep.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's really a fun honey because you can get those roasty notes without adding too much roastiness. You don't have to add a lot of malt.
Right. Yeah.
And that's kind of one of our plays that we're going to be working with at Hobbs is trying to, we're going to be making braggots, but I don't want to call them braggots because unfortunately the marketing of braggots doesn't move to consumers.
Yeah.
The meat and beer geeks would love it, but
nobody else knows what it is. I get that.
No one knows what it is. And not a lot of people want to be the guy that's it sounds like a drunkard kind of term, and
that does.
People. It's an odd thing. But
hey, toss me another when I get young man.
I think it was Kristen England from, the BJCP, but also is the co-owner of Bentley. Now they're they call themselves a brew distillery because they're a brewery and a distillery. Cool. But he gave a talk at HomebrewCon a few years ago and was talking about why you don't find porters. At that time, why there were no porters out there. Everything is either it's a London porter or a double porter or a vanilla porter or an espresso porter because the word porter doesn't sell. You have to add something to it to make people want to pick up a porter. So I hear what you're saying, but I mean, just like those guys didn't abandon the word porter, they just added something to it. Maybe there's something you can play around with, with braggot to make yourself marketable.
And that is the plan. I mean, we all know, especially from the mead world, it's all about education.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll be putting those out, as we do, the staff at the tap room will understand what braggots are, and I'll try to get them, to make sure they use that terminology. I mean, we've just got to educate people. That's really what it is. But from a marketing standpoint, that word is hard to sell.
Sure.
So
don't call it a braggot porter.
Yeah. So the barrel program at Sap House has not changed from the batches that I have recently received. I'm on the last of one of these days here, and I'll tell you again, like I said at the top of the show, Ash, you hit this one out of the park. I know Evan has a lot to do with the meads down at Sap House now, but I mean, my hat's off to that young man. This
he's crushing it. He's the one behind it now. I mean, really, he's in the driver's seat. He's putting out meads. He's starting to break out of his shell now and really push some different flavor profiles. And you know, he's doing excellent. I can't say enough about Evan.
Well, I can't believe the all of the character that this particular one has picked up out of a bourbon barrel. I mean, everything is there.
Yeah.
And again, to our listeners out there, if you're any kind of a bourbon drinker, if you're a connoisseur like I am, I mean, sit for a while with this. So, you know, get yourself a bottle one of these days if you can. And I'm telling you, I mean, it's all there. I mean, I had the last show. I think it was the last show or the show before that. I had a glass of Hey Jealousy. That's the gin barrel. 10 months in a gin barrel.
Yeah, you're not a gin guy.
No, but I could easily become one.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how the gin barrel affected this mead. I mean, it was, it could easily make me a gin drinker. You know, I mean, I'm not that familiar with gin drinks to begin with, but if they're anything like Hey Jealousy, I mean, that was a tasty mead, Ash.
Well, and I think the key in that is finding the right gin. I mean, you wouldn't want to go making flavors of Tanqueray, you know. I mean, you get blown out. Your palate would get blown out. You know, finding the barrels that gin was aged in. Typically, those aren't your run-of-the-mill gins. Those are going to be very botanical, which plays really well with honey, just naturally.
So
and then you mentioned that calendula. Yeah.
Well, before we get off on the calendula, the barrel thing. Question just popped in my head. So when you're selecting barrels, are you that particular that you're looking for a specific distillery or a specific whiskey or a specific tequila, or how does that work? I mean, cheap whiskey's cheap whiskey. Okay, we all know that. Go ahead.
Well, I think JD. I mean, we all know what you put in is what you're going to get out, right?
Yeah.
You put something cheap in, you're going to get something cheap out. If not, you're lucky.
Yeah.
The way that I pick barrels, and I think I've said this before on your show, is I'm a pain in the ass to the guy with the barrels. I beat the shit out of the barrels. To the point now that these guys, they now pressurize their barrels. So now I know that when I get that barrel to my place and I pop the bung, it actually is pressurized. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And when I go picking these barrels out, there's a few different laws you have to watch out for. And I don't know if they're as much as laws as they are just trademark protections. But like in rum, you can never get a rum barrel from a large rum manufacturer that says the company on it, and they won't tell you who they are.
Oh.
So like local distilleries, sure, you can get rum barrels. You know, I've got some from Few, I've got some from Sea Hag. They have no problem putting their names on these things. Mm-hmm. But when you get into like the bigger, real like Caribbean rums and various things, they will not allow their names to be on them.
I see.
But what I look for is I've got to be able to smell it. I've got to be able to understand, you know, how long it's been sitting. Are they wetting the barrels? Mm-hmm. You know, there's places that do that actually add spirits to the barrels to make them smell a little more fresher than they are. Mm-hmm. And you can tell it's if it smells like you just opened a bottle of Caribbean rum, chances are that's not right, because They should be oxidized.
Yeah,
you should know
exactly.
that should not smell that good, so you get little hints like that. And so it's not really about the distillery that I'm picking. It's about the care of the barrel, the credibility of the people I'm buying it from, and then ultimately the aromatics of what I'm trying to add to my products. So when I pick a gin barrel, that's really important. We put out a gin barrel mead a while back called Tomcat, and Tomcat is a famous gin. It's one of the very first barrel-aged gins, to the point where they fought the TTB because gin, by regulation, cannot be barrel-aged.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so they actually bent a lot of the rules and crushed through some of these barriers. And they're right in our neighboring state in Vermont at Caledonia Spirits. And those guys make wonderful honey cordials, honey spirits. Most everything they use is based with honey. It's awesome. And so we grabbed some of those Tomcat barrels. Tomcat gin is just excellent. So we knew what we were getting with those barrels specifically. And we didn't go tweaking our mead. We wanted the Tomcat to come through on those specifically. So we didn't actually add varietals to that.
Yeah. Let's wrap up with the forage series here. Now I've had one, actually two, the calendula and the pine and rhubbarb.
The spruce tip rhubarb?
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan. Not a huge fan. I mean, it was certainly drinkable. Don't get me wrong, actually, but I just wasn't. And I don't think it's the rhubarb, because I love rhubarb in any form. But I think it was the pine. I just can't.
JD didn't like it. I'm never making it again.
No. I just couldn't get around. I can't get past the pine. Yeah, that's not the only pine that I've had too. I just can't get past the pine. You know what I mean? Like chewing on a pine cone. I just,
buddy,
I don't
get in
know.
the Christmas spirit, man.
Get into the Christmas spirit.
It is like Christmas. It really is.
So talk about the forage.
I get it, buddy.
Yeah, talk about the forage series.
Forage.
Yeah, we're all about that too. So
forage is something. So forage is super cool because it's something all of your listeners can do, right? You obviously you have to be knowledgeable about what you're picking. Make sure it's not poisonous. Make sure you know what you're doing. It's not something you can just willy-nilly, because you can get sick or whatever. But we have at Sap House, we have an in-house forager that works with us, and that's all she does. And she goes out all 4 seasons and finds amazing wild edibles. And of course, being a commercial operation, we have to follow the GRAS list. And the GRAS list is the FDA's rules of generally recognized as safe. So we can't just go out there and use
lawn clippings.
Certain things. Well, you can use lawn clippings. Grass is totally legal, but I couldn't use, like, we had her go out and she got dogwood berries. Dogwood berries have some carcinogenic properties to them if used in like super concentration. I mean, like ridiculous concentration, but it's never been legal to use as a beverage additive because of that. We made a mead anyway. We didn't sell it. We just wanted to see what it would taste like. It's delicious, but you don't want to go out there and do something that you might regret. No one wants poison ivy meat.
Poison.
So going out for the home brewers that are listening, I mean, there are some really easy, some really great books you can get to find some really easy clippings out there in the world. And we created Forage Series. It's a great tip of the hat to what surrounds us locally. When we started Sap House, everything we produced was from New Hampshire. If you get a dated bottle from 2010 through 2011, it's 100% New Hampshire made, everything in it. But as we grew our company, we grew out of the ability to do that and went New England, some things we obviously pick from all over the world, like our honeys,
Sure.
for great reason. But one thing we were able to do is create kind of a series or a brand that is foraged. It's local. It's as local as it can be. So it really honors that tradition that we started with. So calendula is one of them that you might have. And calendula is nothing but the marigold. That's all it is. It's the marigold.
Oh, wow.
And it's awesome in salad. Marigolds are delicious. They're great to eat. And we wanted to highlight those in a mead. And they're just very floral. That's all it is. It's a very generic, very floral flavor. And that's something we were going for. We have one coming out that's made with chaga. Chaga is a fungus that grows on birch trees.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we can't say that it's super good for you and high in antioxidants because the FDA won't allow us, but it's super high in antioxidants and it's super good for you.
You heard it here first. And the FDA doesn't live at the meat house. So.
Well, they might. You never know.
Yeah.
But we're happy to produce that. We've done Crimson Sumac. Freaks everybody out. We always say it only hits just a little.
Yeah, just looking
but
at
it tastes like
Crimson
pink
Sumac.
lemonade.
Well, wow, pink lemonade. Wow.
Yeah. So back in the old days, you West Coasters might not remember that far back, but Revolutionary War, Civil War, they would pick, these Crimson Sumac flowers, and they'd boil them, and they're very high in vitamin C. And when you boil them, they'd make a tea, and it tastes just like pink lemonade. It's delicious.
Oh,
wow. It's awesome.
Oh, wow. Excellent.
And then the spruce tips, we actually went out and trimmed all the fresh spruce tips that grew, or we didn't, but Jenna did. She went out and picked all those.
Yeah.
Spruce tips are actually a very historical additive to beer.
Why rhubarb? Why rhubarb with spruce tip?
The rhubarb was something that we wanted to add because pine or spruce tips aren't acidic. They're extremely tannic, but they're bright. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to add some acidity from the rhubarb to bring up a little bit more of the brightness from the other kind of another angle. And that's what we came up with. And we questioned it at first, and I've brought this book up 1,000 times, but we went through our flavor Bible, mm-hmm. and rhubarb and spruce tips are affinities. And we were like, you know what? We grow those. Let's do it.
There you go. There you go.
So we did. And we don't really like to put in the Forage series things that you can cultivate. We try not to do that. Rhubarb is definitely a cultivator, but we were like, a little gray area. Let's do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's okay as long as the main character is something that's foraged and not cultivated. I think that works.
Exactly.
Jeff and Ryan, before we cut Ash loose here, you guys have anything to add? Any questions?
Yeah, I feel like I'm doing all the talking, guys.
That's okay. They hear enough of me every week. Sometimes they tell me that. You sparked something in my mind. So I guess more of a comment before the question. But I last year when the pine cones were green, I made a green pine cone syrup, and I'm going to use that here now. It's in a mason jar, but I'm going to work that into a mead here a little bit. So I guess a couple of questions. Number one, have you ever used green pine cones or even considered them in your Forage series?
Not green. We've used white pine cones.
Okay.
What would be the difference there in?
Well, when I mean green pine cones, these are like when they are
They're young.
super young and small, like really young, really small, and I've
Yep.
I made a really kind of, I feel like, yes, sun. I know sun tea is kind of not in vogue anymore, but you almost do like a sun tea thing. So you fill up essentially, maybe a cup's worth. This is for really 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 small, batch, but you do like a cup's worth of green pine cones, and then like a cup's worth of brown sugar in a mason jar, and you let it sit in the sun for like a month, and it just kind of turns into this syrup, and it actually is really really great smelling and great tasting. I guess we don't have to do the brown sugar, but it was just using the green pine cones, I thought was interesting.
I would just be sure to look up turpentine and make sure you're not reaching levels of those chemicals that could be not so good for you. But yeah, you can.
Right. No,
you can do that.
I got the idea from a very well-known, well-known forager and author, and
I say it more for your
listeners
than I do for you. Oh.
Yes, thank you.
You mean turpentine? Never heard it called that. You mean turpentine, the stuff they thin paint with?
Yeah, that comes from pine.
Oh my God.
So to answer your question, though, we've done. You rattled my cage, my brain box there a little bit. We've done pine candles, which are very similar to young green pine cones. We've also done the white pine cones. Now, when I say white pine cones, it's white pine, which is the species of the tree, and those pine cones were very small and they were green. But they have a very particular flavor. They do have that piney note, of course, but they actually have when they were steeped in mead, they actually had kind of a neat nuttiness that came with them. But yeah, definitely. I would use all of that. I'd recommend, to some degree using that. Simple syrups are another great thing to learn to make. So honey has, if you were to ever substitute honey for sugar in a baking arrangement, you would use 1/3 more honey than you would sugar to make up for the difference.
Interesting.
And if you made a simple syrup in bartending, you make a simple syrup. It's 1-to-1, water and sugar, and then you add your flavor. You add a sprig of rosemary or whatever your flavor of simple syrup you want to add, so you can add that syrup to your cocktail. You can do the same thing with honey, except you would use 1 1/3 cup of honey and water, and then you'd use your pine cones, or you could use some flowers, or you can use some rosemary. Again, I use that as a good example. You boil that for until you dissolve 1/3 of the volume. When you do that, you come up with this cool syrup that is just absolutely flavor packed with that ingredient that you added. So you pull that rosemary out, and you now have this cool rosemary honey simple syrup that you just created. So
in an old fashioned,
think of that.
In an old fashioned.
Oh shit! Yeah. Sorry.
No problem.
Yes, that would be amazing.
Oh, dude,
that would be amazing.
So let's do that again. That's 1 1/3 cup honey, right?
Honey to 1 cup of water.
And you boil 1/3 out, reduced by 1/3.
Yep.
For all our listeners out there, a simple syrup, and at that point you just stick a sprig of rosemary in, let it steep for a little bit, pull it out. Oh my God, I can taste it now.
Yeah, do the boil with your ingredient. Throw your rosemary and boil it up.
Okay.
Boil off your 1/3. Strain out the ingredient that you used. Could be orange peels. It could be anything.
Sure.
And that liquid will be exactly what you're looking for. We used to do. There's a great cocktail called a Greyhound, and the Greyhound is rosemary simple syrup and grapefruit juice. And you put those two flavors together and your minds will be blown. I assure you. I absolutely assure you. Rosemary and grapefruit is one of the coolest flavors ever.
I wish I could do that, but I can't have grapefruit anymore. Jeff, anything to wrap up here before we let
that
Ash
was a
go?
tangent.
Hey, no problem. No. That's a good one.
Before.
Oh, your question.
Don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, you have a couple
one
things.
more of these for you.
Yeah.
And I hope it. I know it's going to sound like a big question here, and we've already been talking for a while, so we just might have to deal with it. But when you're talk to me about yeast selection when you're making your braggots or your honey beers.
Yeast selection. Well, I mean, it's always good to start with the descriptions the company gives you. That's a great starting point. And then you want to take a dive a little deeper, or at least I want to. This is what I do. I like to find out if yeasts are a type of killer yeast. If they're a dominating yeast, most Saccharomyces are, so you don't really have to worry there. And then you also want to look at if they are fructophilic or glucophilic. I don't know if I've talked about that on your show at all.
No.
But yeast have their own desires, and their desire obviously is sugar, but they also like particular sugars over other sugars. And if they're fructophilic, that means they're going to ferment the fructose first. If they're glucophilic, they're going to ferment the glucose first. It doesn't mean they can't ferment the others. They're just going to go to their preferred sugar source first. So you're going to get high attenuation, a high efficiency, and high metabolism rate out of those yeasts based on those sugars and their profile of enjoying them. So it's good to always kind of grab that information. Most yeast, I mean, as we know, fructose and glucose, most any yeast will ferment through that. But we also know that when yeast start to stress, they produce various fusels and esters that then produce the descriptions that your companies like to write on those papers, whether it's they create berry flavors or stone fruits, or they create this, longer polysaccharide chain so they have bigger mouthfeel. There's reason for all of that. And is it temperature? Is it sugar source? Is it osmotic pressure? Because, of course, that's something too. So I always kind of take it a little step further than just reading those descriptions. But a lot of times, like a great example of just kind of going with what you know is that Wannabee is USO5. I mean, it's a simple, straight up yeast that everybody uses. Mm-hmm. If you don't, you should. It's just a really simple beer strain. I say beer strain, you can use it in anything, but it's great in beers. That doesn't produce anything crazy that you can't control. We weren't looking for that. We wanted to highlight the honey. I didn't want to burn through the floral notes of that honey or the cinnamon characteristics of the clover. I didn't want to burn through, any of the lemon. I didn't want to create any flavors that would contradict or be contradictory to the lemon flavor or the acidity. So we kind of broke things apart like that. But, sometimes you can also get paralysis by analysis, right? You could sit there and be like, geez, I don't want this. I don't want that. I want this. I want that. And then pretty soon you're not doing any of it. Yeah. It's really that trial and error. And I know that's like so cliche and everybody's heard that 1,000 times, but if you run down that little list of tests that I kind of go through, you might find that you're going to go in a different direction on yeast source. YAN requirements are super important too. Are you giving nutrients to these things? Is it a high nitrogen? Does it have high nitrogen needs? If it does, how are you giving it to them? If you don't, what off flavors are you going to get that you're not prepared for? Those are all key questions along the way. But as home brewers, you don't have to create consistency like a commercial brewer does. The consumer that loves our brand and loves our product expect the same product every time they buy it off the shelf. A home brewer has that wonderful ability to be like, this time I went out of the box here and I just used this, and this is what I came up with. And next time I'm going to do this, and that's great. That's the best part of being a home brewer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my take on it. If you're going something maple, here's a little tip. If you're going maple is glucose. Maple syrup is glucose. So find glucophilic yeast that can tolerate that and really enjoy it. Otherwise, maple mead typically has a weird flavor for a long time that people are like, oh, I don't know, it doesn't taste right. And they dump it down the drain. All it needs is age.
Mm-hmm.
For what that's worth.
Very good.
You want to give our listeners an example of a yeast that'll do that for you?
Please.
Of glucophilic yeast or fructophilic yeast?
Yeah, one of each. Yeah.
One of each. I mean, a great fructophilic yeast. I mean, it burns through anything. Is 1118.
Mm-hmm.
K1V is also a very fructophilic yeast. If you're looking for glucophilic, D254 works really well. 71B is actually no, I take that back. D47, I believe, is a glucophilic yeast. 71B is a high osmotic pressure yeast, great for fructose. It loves fruit. Any of you like fruit bombs?
That's a very popular yeast.
Pressure.
Yeah, that's a very popular one with the melomels. Yeah.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah, there is a reason for that.
Yeah.
There are books about it.
Excellent stuff. Good stuff. Jeff, give you the last word here, bud, since you haven't had a chance with the mic yet.
Oh, man, I haven't had a chance, but I swear Ash is looking over my shoulder here. We talked about like seasonal variations in honey. We talked about the barrel age program. We talked about foraging and the calendula, especially. That's been one of my absolute favorites from Sap House. I mean, whether you realize it or not, you've hit everything I wanted to talk about. So
there you go.
I'm struggling to find a question to ask here.
I'm telling you, Ash, it's always a pleasure to have you in the house. You're no stranger here for sure. Looking forward to visiting.
You guys are great hosts.
Well, thank you. We look forward to our visit out there in June. And tell our listeners if you're in New Hampshire or surround. I mean, New Hampshire ain't all that big. So if you're in Maine or Vermont or wherever in the hell you are in New England, where can they hit the tavern and suck up some beers and eat some good food?
Yeah, and please don't make yourself a stranger to me. I want to meet you. Absolutely. One thing I would
well, let them know where you're at.
You were actually
yeah. I
know where I'm going.
Plug yeah.
So
plug your bar.
Obviously, you can. Yeah, you can go to hobbstavern.com and you can go to saphousemeadery.com. We are all working on brand new websites, so hang in there to see those launches. With Sap House, we ship to 43 states, so you can buy our meads and get them delivered directly to your door. You can join Club Mead and get them shipped to you with our selections of awesome meads.
My favorite.
And then if you're ever in the area, because we don't ship any of Hobb's beers, come over and have one, and please introduce yourself. I'd love to meet you.
There you go. There you go, guys. Again, Ash, it's been a pleasure.
One more thing.
Yeah.
I know you're about to. It's been a. I know what you're going to say, but I have to say this more importantly. Everyone who's listening needs to understand what you guys do for the mead industry. More importantly, the meadery owners that listen, because I'm sure there are many, need to understand what great job you guys are doing in educating people on mead, on beer, and the inspiration to make it. And I think it's fantastic. And you guys deserve a round of applause from everyone that's out there, that's making it, that's made it their life, and really enjoying what they're doing, because guarantee you're a big part of that. So thank you guys for hosting me tonight, and thank you guys for doing what you do.
Well, we certainly appreciate that, Ash. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again, looking forward to our visit out there in June. The wife and I, when we get there, can't wait. Probably got to start packing our bags tomorrow. But it'll be a fun trip for sure. Again, guys, Ash Fishbein, Sap House Meadery, Hobb Brewing. If you're in the New England area, look them up. We'll put the links up on the show notes on this episode. Ash, my buddy, my friend, have a good night, my friend.
Thank you, fellas. You guys have a great evening. I'll talk to you all very soon.
You bet. Take care.
Cheers.
All right, Ash Fishbein, Sap House Meadery, Hobb Brewing. Didn't mean to keep him all night, but it just kind of rolls into that kind of thing with Ash, Lots to talk about. We talked about a lot with them. The barrel program, the honeybeer. I think it was a good wrap up for our 6-week stint on honeybeers. Ryan, what do you think?
Ash is somebody we should just almost say, hey, when he's on the show, that's the show. We're probably not going to get to segment 2 or 3.
I don't know why I bothered with the social club tonight.
Yeah,
and it's worth it. I mean, he is so full of knowledge. He's such a fun guy. Such a great member of the meat community. And yeah, I love what he's talking about. I was going to say, I almost forgot what we said. What we told him we wanted to talk to him about tonight, because we covered so much ground and it was all just rich for the harvest.
Well, this last 6 weeks, it was a good topic of discussion actually. By design, Ryan had this little light bulb going off in his head, and honey beer. I mean, how is honey being treated in various different ways when it comes to, brewing beer? And it kind of ties into the whole braggot mead making thing a little bit. And I thought it was pretty important information, Ryan. How honey is being treated along the way during the brewery process. So, and we discovered that it runs the full gamut from boil to high krausen.
Absolutely. And, the thing is, all of them have, in this last 6-week set, right? All of them have won awards and been highly acclaimed, and they all approach it differently. So, keep in mind that you can get, there's not just one way to skin a cat. There's a lot of different ways that are going to get you, something very positive and something you want. So I just, hope that continues to drive the curiosity, the experimental nature, and just the drive of all those folks out there trying to craft, their next batches.
Yeah. Jeff, thoughts on the discussion we had tonight?
Oh man, like I said, we covered so much, and I feel like every time we have Ash on, I'm going to go back and listen to it like 3 or 4 times just to get everything, because, jeez.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, he every time he comes on the show, I mean, that's why, I ask our listeners, get out your pad and paper, pad and pencil, and start taking notes, because this dude's going to leave little nuggets of good information all along the way, all night long, all during his segment. And, and sure enough, I mean, it paid off again tonight. I mean, I've got a couple of pages worth of stuff here. I'm eager to try that simple syrup, Ryan. I'm looking for an old fashioned made with that rosemary infused honey-based simple syrup. What do you think about that? Or margarita even. What about a margarita?
There you go.
That could be interesting.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's very, we've had some simple syrup folks on the show before. I should say Belgian syrup folks on the show before.
Mm-hmm.
But the making the sugars and the syrups is, I think, a great way to flavor your brews, and kind of do it in a controlled fashion. So all about it. And then, like I said, cocktails and don't forget cakes too. I mean, you want to infuse a little something into your batch of brownies or your cakes, whatever you're doing. Using flavored sugar is a good way to do that too.
Well, I'm thinking, along the lines of these mead tails that you're so famously have put together in the past on the show. What in addition to the bar back, a simple syrup made with honey and whatever you want to infuse it with. I dig the whole rosemary thing. I used to drop a little sprig of rosemary in a bottle of Chardonnay and let it sit for a couple of weeks, and then pour, chill it down and then pour a glass. So that is really good. So I'm kind of eager to try this and just, bottle it up and use it on my bar back for a mix. But these mead tails that you keep talking about, I mean, this is just something else that, can be used. I mean, mead, brewing a mead isn't just about putting it in a bottle and pouring a glass and drinking it. I mean, there's a lot you can do with it. And you've been pretty famous on the show over the years about, making these mead tails with a simple mead, just a traditional mead even. So, I think that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
We're just, oh my God, guys, we're like 4 minutes away from closing out the show, so I think I'm just going to use the time up. I want to apologize to the social club. We got a whole bunch of them here, but I tell you what, we're going to be going on hiatus here for a couple of weeks. We will not forget about you, I promise. Okay, I usually keep a running log of these social interactions that we have and social clubs. So we'll hang on to them for next week. We were going to talk about step feeding. That'll be up first show when we come back from hiatus, Jeff, for segment 2. I'm eager to talk about that too and learn a little bit more about step feeding and how different folks are treating that.
Yeah, compare notes, so to speak.
I think it's an important topic. We haven't really talked about it in any great detail. And, I mean, some of the more modern recipes you look at out there that you find, everybody's talking about this whole step feeding concept. It wasn't that long ago when you just tossed everything in up front. A lot of people still do. I still do once in a while. But now I think it's getting a little bit more scientific, and this whole step feeding thing, and it's like keeping your happy kids happy. If you want to do that, just feed them once in a while.
And I think it dovetails so nicely with talking about brackets and honey beers, because they're you get so much more of the honey character either at knockout or Heikrausen, or a little bit after that, still into primary. But those step feedings can be a great way to introduce honey into an alcoholic beverage and still keep that honey character that you would otherwise lose in a very high temperature situation like a boil. Yeah. So I think it's worth talking about. So we'll kind of tease it with that and pick it up in about 3 weeks.
Yep. I tell you what, we're just going to go ahead and drop it right there for the night. And we want to thank everybody for hanging out with us here in this episode, number 192. My God, I can't believe it. 192 episode, guys. When we come back, it'll just be, like 6, 7 more or 8 more or whatever, and we'll be at 200. Holy crap.
All right.
I can't believe we've done that many. Anyway, hey, thanks for hanging out with us, and big thanks to Ash Fishbein from Hobb Brewing and Sap House Meadery for spending time with us this evening. Hey, you want to get on the show, it's pretty easy. All you got to do is let us know what you're brewing. Just email us, info@themeadhouse.com, or you can send us a message on Facebook or Twitter, both at The Mead House, and we'll set up a time and a day for you to appear on the show. We'd love to have you and get you going, talk about your brew projects and what you got going. So, hey, remember, we're on hiatus for the next 2 weeks until March 30th as we get ready for another 6-week stint here at the Mead House So in the meantime, happy mead making. That's it from the Mead House. Ryan flipped the lights off. Jeff slammed the doors shut. Hey, we'll be back in 2 weeks with episode number 193 of the Mead House. We're gone.